Okay, folks, here we are. We're playing some 1-3 cash. I managed to book my first win of just $300 a few days ago, as well as cashing a monster stack. So the Calgary curse is over. We are now at maybe a 10% win rate for cash games and a 5% win cash rate for tournaments. So let's try and keep this going. We sit down with 500 at this 1-3 table. There are two limps. I bump up the 6-5 of diamonds up to $20. We go pretty multi-way to this flop. We're going four ways. The small blind has called as well as both the limpers. It comes down ace, jack, 7 rainbow. Now, small blind checks, under the gun checks, and under the gun +2 checks. And an exploit I've been using here in Calgary is bluffing a little bit more when my hands don't really interact with their folding range. They're going to donk so much ace X here that I'm just not worried about getting called down too often. Like, if they have like ace 4 off, they just donk for pot so often. So I'm going to go for a small bet here, see if we can clear out the field. I put in 20, folds around, and only one of the limpers makes the call. I played with this guy quite a bit. He's just very passive, but prioritizes protection over everything. So I'm not worried about this. He's probably just got like a jack here. The turn is the 3 of spades. We do pick up a gut shot here. He checks it over to me once again, and I'm just going to fire one more big bet just to fold out his jack X. I put in 110, and he snap calls. Now, when he snap calls against this player, this is the green light to bluff any river that isn't a jack. Because this is like one of those calls, it's like, I'm willing to call down river, and I'm calling fast to do it, but they're not actually going to call the river. So once I see the snap call, I'm very ready to bluff any river. It comes down the ace of spades. Not my favorite card, but I just think he's going to be donking any ace, so I'm not worried about that. Maybe he gets a little call happy with a jack, but I seriously doubt it. They're just so passive. So when he checks to me, I think about it for a bit, and I just decide to go for it here. I move all in for 350. My opponent gives it maybe 30 seconds of thought, and calls. He rolls over pocket kings. Oh my god. This man overlimped pocket kings, and then just called to go to a 4-way flop. It comes down ace high, and then calls down the pre-flop aggressor when they go bet jam, and I get completely owned. And I play a few more hands this session and then rack up. So let's jump straight into the next session of poker here in Calgary, where I'm getting killed every day. Okay, it's a new day. We're in for 500, which is a table max because it is a match the stack and it's a brand new table. I open up the king 4 of diamonds up to $10 under the gun. Button makes the call, and big blind does a very weird small squeeze up to 25. Unfortunately, we cannot fold for this price, even with a hand as weak as king 4 suited, so I toss in the call. Button calls as well. He most likely just has ace king here. It's what I've seen the most out of these small squeezes. Anyways, we go to this flop. It comes down 6-6 deuce rainbow. Big blind checks, I check, and Button, whose hands are shaking like crazy, puts in a very large bet of 60. Big blind folds, and now it's back on me. Hand shaking, I'm trying to get a little bit more to live tells. It means either very strong or very weak. I'm leaning towards very strong, but she keeps glancing at me and giving me some stares and then quickly looking away. And that kind of makes me feel like she's a little bit on the weak side. So I'm just going to go for a very small raise, try and fold out something like some of her air. So I bump it up to 120. She gives it a sigh and goes, well, I guess I'm all in then. And this vlog is not up to a great start. Why am I using these stupid reads? All right, we're going back to patient Sam. No more of this nonsense. We are down $620. That's 200 big blinds in 2 hands just off these stupid reads. All right, on to the next hand. Okay, we've topped off our stack back up to 500. There's a couple limps. I look down at 6-3 of diamonds, decide to overlimp this. I think it's fine. Button overlimps, small blind calls, and big blind checks his option. We're going 6 ways to this flop, which comes down 8 deuce deuce, 2 clubs, and a diamond. Action checks all the way to me, and I see no sense in betting into 5 opponents, so I check it back, and Button checks behind. We get a beautiful turn. It is the 5 of diamonds, giving us a straight flush gut shot, flush draw, and gutter. Small blind bets out 10, big blind calls, and hijack calls, and small blind, like one of these guys has to have a deuce, and I'm never getting them to fold a deuce, so let's just call, try and hit her hand. Button folds. Off to the river, it comes down the 4 of diamonds. That is a straight flush, folks. Small blind now checks, big blind checks, hijack bets out for 10, and I look over to stack. He's only got like 80 behind, so I'm just going to put hijack all in. I re-raise it up to 100. Small blind is now in the tank, and it's starting to feel good. I get the feeling he might have quads here, and if he does have quads, it's like a $12,000 bad beat jackpot. And he does. He goes all in here for 287. Big blind folds. Hijack thinks about it for a bit. Folds. And I look over the table, say, please have quads. I call. And he rolls over. 5 deuce of hearts. Oh, no bad beat jackpot, but scooping in a very nice pot with a straight flush here. Okay, on to the next hand. We open up the button with pocket threes up to $10. Only the small blind makes the call, so we're going heads up to this flop, which comes down queen, jack, 4, 2 diamonds, and a heart. He checks it over to me, and I decide to go for a bet here. You know, we're very happy to fold out a hand like pocket fives, which just has us crushed. And even a hand like 8-7 of spades, we're really happy to fold it out because he's never going to bluff us with it, so why let him collect his equity? I put in a bet of 5, and he calls. Off to the turn, it is the 3 of spades. We turn a set. Action checks to me again, and we're just going to continue betting here. 20 into the middle, and my opponent once again calls. Off to the river, it is the 8 of clubs. My opponent checks to me, 10-9 to get there, but I imagine he would donk if he did hit. So we go all in. My opponent gives it some thought. Flicks in the call. That is good news. We are taking down another pot, and we're getting close to unstuck. We pick up the ace, queen of spades under the gun. I bump it up to $10. We get a lot of calls. We're going 5 ways to this flop with ace, queen of spades, and it comes down ace, jack, deuce, 2 hearts, and a diamond. We do have top pair, good kicker, and a gutter, but it's not a great flop. I'm probably going to check range here out of position, so that is what I do. And it goes around to the cutoff, who puts in a smallish bet of 25. Button folds, small blind folds, and now it's back on me. I give it some thought, and I just think he would size up a lot more with like jack 10, ace 10, ace jack, king queen, those type of hands. It's very often that I've seen here in Calgary, people just pot it or overbet it with these hands. Everyone just values protection. You get donked into so often here. So I think I'm very far ahead, but I also think it's going to be extremely hard to get value. And we can deny some equity, so I'm just going to move all in here. Under the gun plus 2 folds, cutoff gives it a little bit of thought. Before making the call, I table my hand. He keeps his hidden. The turn is the jack of diamonds. That's really bad. The river is even worse. It's the queen of hearts. Everything got there. My opponent shakes his head and then mucks his cards. Okay, sweet. Maybe he had queen 10 of... I don't know. But anyways, happy to pick up that pot. And we are $200 away from even now. No, I lied. We're actually up 150 at this point. Anyways, small blind has raised it up to $12 over and under the gun limp. I took a quick peek at my hand, and this is the hand right after ace, queen of spades. I thought they were suited, so I went for the call, and under the gun calls as well. We go 3 ways to this flop, which comes down 9-8-3 rainbow. Small blind puts in a bet of $25. He has been c-betting quite large and basically every single board, no matter how multi-way, so we have a very clear raise for value here. I bump it up to 70, under the gun gets out the way, and small blind does continue. Hoping for a clean turn to keep barreling on, but that is not what we get. We get the king of spades, and my opponent goes into a deep tank. Oh, a minute passes before my opponent checks, and we're never betting on this card. You know, any overs, really. We're just happy to check this back, so that is what I do. We head to the river. It is the 4 of clubs. My opponent gives us some thought. Once again, checks, and that is a green light to go for some value. Let's try to get like a call from like 8-6 suited or something like that. Maybe some pocket 6s. Something like that. I go ahead and bet out 115. My opponent gives it a little bit of thought. We were really hoping for a call at this point. But unfortunately, he just decides to fold. But picking up a nice little pot here. Okay, onto this hand. Now, guys, this hand had a lot of confusion, so try and follow along here because my thought process got so messed up this hand. Button is open up to 15. I look down at pocket queens, and this is the very next hand after the 9-7. These are 3 straight hands in a row. I'm still trying to take notes on my last hand, so I re-raise this up to 60. Big blind folds, and my opponent does continue. Now, I'm still punching in the hands from the last hand into my note tracker, but I lean over, and I take a look at his stack, and I see about 180 in reds behind, so not a whole lot behind. So just keep that in mind. I think he's got 180 behind in reds. I did lean over. He didn't move at all, so that's all I could see, but it looked very clear it was 180. We go to a flop. It comes down king, jack, 7, 1 spade, 2 hearts. Out of position, we're going to do a little bit of checking on this board. Queens are going to fit nicely in there, so I check it. My opponent goes quite a bit into the tank before sliding a very big bet of $95. Now I'll give it some thought, and I don't think he's going to have ace-king here. He's not going to have pocket jacks. You know, all these hands, I have seen him just jam pre-flop a few times already this session, so he's been very happy to get in these sort of medium premiums. So I just don't think we're ever beat here, and I don't think that a hand like King 10 of clubs is going to be betting here for this size. So this feels quite bluffy to me. It feels kind of like a flush draw. It feels sort of like a little bit like an air ball, like an ace 10 of spades or something. Like, just something doesn't feel right about this bet. But I don't want to jam and get him to fold, you know, like, I don't know, 10-9 of clubs, even though that is double gutted. I just thought I'm going to go for the trap. He's going to jam the remaining like $80 in on the turn, and I'll snap him off. So I go for the call. We head to the turn. It is the ace of hearts. Not a great card, but if he did go for some crazy big bet with King 10, he'll probably stop now. We do have a gut shot as well as a flush draw now, but I check it over, hoping that he's just going to pile in the last of his $90. And he goes deep into the tank, like a few minutes, reaches underneath his left arm, and then pulls out a big stack of greens, $350 in greens that I did not see, that weren't even like touching the rest of his stack. And I'm just sitting here wondering where that $350 in greens came from. Counts them out, puts them back under where they were, waits a little bit, another 30 seconds, brings them out again, and then bets $300, leaving himself $145 behind. And now it's back on me, and I just couldn't even think at this point. I was like, what is going on here? These are two massive bets. The ace of hearts makes no sense to keep betting on. Where did that $350 just come from? What is happening? And I just got really, really flustered. I couldn't get my thoughts together. My flop thinking was off because, you know, if he bet 95 and I knew he had this much behind, I wouldn't even think about it. I just let it go. You know, it's just because it wasn't that much damage to our stack. And I think queens is ahead of something that bets like that. But now with this much behind, it kind of changes his range. And I just couldn't think about what hands this could be. Like ace-king jams pre-flop. But now I was thinking, does it? Because now we're deeper. And eventually I just couldn't decide. And I didn't know what to do. And I was taking too long. And I thought maybe I'll just call because it's not really making sense, but my thought process wasn't there. Anyways, I've talked too long. We make the call. I hated it. I didn't know what to do. We go to the river. It is a deuce of clubs. I check. He fires out 145 all in. I make the call. He's got king jack for top two that he just went pot pot. And yeah, we lose a huge pot here. I hated everything about that hand. Hated how I played it. I probably should have asked him to move his arm, but I really don't know where the 350 came from. He's playing short stack the entire time. But yeah, this one got me quite frustrated, unfortunately. Okay, on to this next hand. It's just two hands later. We have a lady who limps 3. I decide to ISO with the 5-3 suited. Not really a great play. I'm a little bit tilted, but she is going to donk any flop that she hits. So we can just c-bet very small versus her and get a very cheap bluff through. Anyways, the big blind also calls. We're going 3 ways to this flop, which comes down king, jack, 6 with 2 clubs. Not a bad start. I put in a c-bet of $15. Big blind continues and low jack folds. Off to a really nice turn is a 7 of hearts, improving us to a gut shot as well as a flush draw. My opponent once again checks. Looking about 2 SPR, and I don't think we're going to get jammed on often enough to want to check this hand back. So I decide to size up to $50, which my opponent also calls. Head to the river. It is the king of hearts, probably one of the worst cards to bluff on. My opponent checks. He's never folding a king here. And now he might not even fold a jack. So I just decided to check back my 5 high. You know, hopefully we don't lose to like 8-9 of clubs. But my opponent has the jack 10 suited. We're going to lose another $100 or so here. Okay, we're back. We have 1,000 in our stack. We've topped off. Under the gun has raised up to 15. Player to my right has called. I flat the 10-9 of spades. I'm not squeezing this hand because he's only got less than 100 bigs behind. We got a few other callers, so we are going 6 ways to this flop, which comes out all right. We flop another flush draw on queen, 7-5, 2 spades, and a diamond. Now the original raiser fires out a huge bet, $85 into 5 players. Folds to me. He's only got 100 behind, so we have to make a very frustrating fold here. This is what I mean when I was trying to go with my reads earlier. they just bet pot or overbet when they do have something big. So I have been using my exploits and targeting their checks quite often, but has not been working out well for me, and having to fold a flush draw on the flop, my tilt has peaked and I decide to rack up my chips and go home. And with that, we are going to end the video down $500 on the first session, down another $95 in this one, for a total loss of $595. Deerfoot in has been very unkind to me. I have 2 days left here. I'm going to fire the final $400 tournament and then play a bit of 1-3 or 2-5 and then call it quits. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all next week.